Hello and welcome back again. Today we are going to discuss about another interesting but controversial topic, right? Whether fixed bit and agile is possible or not, right? And I'm pretty sure, right, those who are working on program manager kind of role or agile project manager kind of role, this topic is pretty close to your heart, right? Because I'm sure if you are working in a fixed bit project and you are running that project in agile, you are definitely facing certain challenges, right, that we are going to discuss in today's topic. Okay, so I'll not prolong this monologue any further. Let us straight away go into the presentation. Okay, friend, let us get started with the presentation. So, from the subject line, you can see, right, fixed bid project versus agile is like some serious match, right, or some battle is about to begin. And nothing of that sort, right? Both can go hand in hand, but there are some catch, some tweaks that we need to make, and that is what we are going to discuss. And we'll learn from each other, right? As I mentioned, right? If you have some different opinion, if you have some different experience, exposure, then please share as part of a comment or whatever the means you want to. That will definitely enrich me and as well as all the viewers who are actually watching this video. Okay, so without further delay, let us get started. So before getting into the discussion, right? I mean, fixed bid and agile and all these discussion. Before even prior to that, let us try to understand quickly what are the different type of contracts. So there are various type of contracts, but we will be touching upon few of them. I am pretty sure most of you are already aware of this, but it's just a refresher for all of you. Like first is time and material contract, as you know, right? It's kind of a you are not committed for any fixed budget or fixed kind of timeline. Here you are working on day-to-day basis, and mostly like you are managed by the customer, and on regular basis you are getting billed. For example, like 9 hours per day basis or something of that sort. Here basically most of the time your uh, work plan is done by the customer management teams. Okay, so next is basically fixed capacity contract. This is interesting, right? And per my opinion, this actually goes pretty well with agile, right? Fixed capacity is basically you are contracting for a fixed capacity for say you are contracting 10 people will be working for 1 pi or 2 pi. That means for 1 quarter or 2 quarter, right? And using those 10 people, what are the outcome need to be delivered, that depends on the customer management part, right? So here you are only contracting for the 10 people for so many times, right? Then next one is the tricky one, and that is what we are going to discuss as part of this discussion. That is basically fixed bid contract, where your fixed cost, scope, and time, mostly everything is basically tied up. So basically your hand is tied up, and you are still basically going for the agile methodologies, and which is predominantly for getting the benefit of iterative delivery and also getting the benefit of adaptability. Okay, but before getting into the further discussion, let us try to understand few more things, right, regarding the iron triangle, and that will clarify some of the things before we get into the actual discussion. So I'm pretty sure most of you already heard about the iron triangle. Again, this is a refresher one. So iron triangle is like this. Like if we want to tally the iron triangle between traditional and agile, this is how it looks like. This is basically the traditional iron triangle where, okay, so basically the lower portion is the variable portion, okay, as I'm highlighting, and the upper portion is basically the fixed portion. So in traditional, what happened, right? Normal waterfallish kind of environment, what we do, uh, cost and scope, those are basically estimable. So you are considering that you have a fixed scope, and you to deliver this fixed scope, you are doing a time estimation, and based on that you are basically doing a cost estimation. That is how traditional waterfall model goes in, right? So your scope part is basically fixed here. Now if I look into the agile part of it, right, agile iron triangle, it is basically inverted triangle, right? Here what agile is saying, your cost and timeline can be fixed, right? But your scope can vary. That means, as I was mentioning, right, as part of this fixed capacity contract, right, and that is why that is the reason I said, right, this is the contract which actually goes pretty well with agile, right, where you are actually committing for a fixed timeline and fixed head, which actually in turns will become cost, right? But you don't know, right? 10 people for one PI or one quarter. You need to utilize this capacity, and you need to accordingly decide the scope. That means scope can vary, and that is what basically in agile world iron triangle is. And if your project is following this inverted iron triangle, that is the best case situation, right? And if it is following, then there is no question of any debate or no controversies also. But the problem comes in when we are uh, here in this world actually, right, where fixed bid come into the picture, right, where everything is fixed, right, cost, time, basically this is what I'm talking about, where cost, time and scope, everything are fixed, right? That is where you are stuck, and that is the solution we are trying to find here through the discussion, right? So what I'm trying to do here is, right, let us try to understand what are the different challenges, right, in this situation. Then we'll discuss the solution part. There are various other challenges also, but I have noted down few of the challenges what I personally faced in my experience, right? So let us get started with those discussion or conversation. Okay, so what are those challenges when you are running a program in Fitbit in and agile also, right? So first and foremost, is basically increasing scope, right? So you have started the program with everything fixed, right? Now you are assuming that your scope is fixed, timeline is fixed, and cost is fixed. But in reality, what you are seeing, that there are increase in the scope, right? And that is basically leading to the timeline slippage, and also definitely a cost impact, right? Then incorrect high level estimation, right? During the bidding phase, or during the proposal phase, when you are actually planning for the project, or you are taking the project at that point of time, when you are doing a high level estimation, it should be accurate. Accurate in the sense, you have to have some basis of doing the estimation. It cannot be like go uh, 50 or 60% basically uh, differ. If that is the case, then you are in deep trouble. And most of the cases where we see actually where fixed bid and agile project are failing or struggling, their initial estimation is actually incorrect, or they are actually falling apart. Okay. Then the next one is, there is, since it is agile, so we do not think about the change management process, or do not think about the change control board, and that is what where we actually do the mistake, right? Normally agile means like you should anticipate changes, and changes can happen at any given point of time. That is okay, that is correct. But here we are dealing with a fixed timeline and fixed budget, right? Here we do not have the luxury to say that I have a fixed timeline and fixed budget, but I can encourage as many number of changes as it is coming, right? That is not possible. So you have to have some mechanism to handle that, and for that you need to have a proper change management process in place. Then normally when we start this kind of project, at the beginning we see that there is lack of functional knowledge, right? And also from the execution phase, right? When we are in execution phase, we see there are not much SME knowledge also involved, neither from customer side nor from the from your organization side, and that is where team struggle to deliver, right, on time. Then this is a classic problem, right? We normally, when we are in the bidding phase or proposal phase, we normally underestimate the overall problem, right? And we think about much easier solution. But when we actually start the journey, and when we started building up, right, we see that the solution, a more complex solution, is required than we anticipated, and that is also another problem of missing link or missing requirements. Okay, so then the next problem is basically the environment availability. Here what happened, right, when we are actually running a big project, our general tendency is to basically go for parallelism as much as possible. That means working for multiple releases at a time, right? But on reality or on ground, what happened, right, provisioning those multiple environment, multiple database become a challenging one. But as per the commitment, sometime we need to go for such parallelism, and in that case we need to have a proper environment provisioning plan. Otherwise, on time environment availability will also become a roadblocker for you, right, for such kind of projects. Then often we overlook but skill level mismatch, right? I mean, when we start the project, we do the estimation that is based on the experience people, but on ground when we actually execute the project, we normally go for the less experience or fresher kind of resources, right? And there basically the skill level mismatch comes into picture, and that is where the estimation actually start failing. We will be discussing in details in this regards. So one more thing is basically absence of groom backlog and missing NFRs during the estimation phase or during the discovery phase. We should have a groom backlog ready, at least to the feature or epic level, right? And also for the entire project, all the NFRs should be defined. NFRs in the sense non-functional requirement. For example, uh, uh, how much load it is expecting, what will be the response time, and so on so forth, right? So all these things should be well discussed, well defined, even before getting into the contract, right? So these are the problems we discussed. Now let us start talking about some of the probable solution. And at the beginning, as I mentioned, right, there is nothing right, nothing wrong, right? These are not bibles also, whatever I am going to discuss, right? This is just from my personal experience. If you have anything, you also can share your experience. But again, a point of caution that whatever the solution I am going to discuss, that is purely based on my personal experience and my personal opinion, and that is why I am saying these are probable solution. Okay, let us get into that. First, how I am categorizing at contract level, right? What can we do better in order to handle this type of project? So as I was mentioning, if possible, go for TNM or go for the fixed capacity, or basically small timeline level contract, right, or evolving contract. For example, let us deliver one PI, then we'll sign another contract. Then or quarter basis, let us deliver these many things in next 3 months. So Thus you can actually reduce the risk a lot, right? Instead of going for a big bang contract of 2 years or multi-millions, if you are going for a small uh, periodic or incremental contract, it will give a less probability of risk, right? Or even if it is failing, the intensity will be much lesser. But often it is not possible, right? Because we are in competitive world. If you are not going for the deal, somebody else will snatch that. At that point of time, there are some thumb rules basically we need to follow even before signing the original contract, right? Just after the proposal, after a few discussion, we should not sign the contract, right? So what we should do actually, we should have a dedicated discovery phase, right? So a here I'm saying we should have a dedicated discovery phase. That means in this phase you will try to understand the system or trying to understand the requirement. You will discuss with n number of users, SMEs. Also, you will involve the functional leads, you will involve the senior technical architect, senior developer, senior tester from your end, who will be part of your core team throughout, and they should be there to understand the project scope in details, and they should be part of the estimation. And once you have a successful discovery phase, that means at the beginning of the discovery phase you should define that this is the period I will go for the discovery phase. Let's say 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 3 months, whatever it is, right? But you should target for a specific outcome of the discovery phase. Yes, I will come up with the feature and epic list, right? I will come up with the estimation, I will come up with the design decisions, and so on and so forth. These are just examples. But net what I'm trying to say here is, without dedicated discovery phase, it actually becomes very riskier if you are going into the contract right away. Then the next thing is basically, after the discovery phase, your scope should be clearly defined, right? Sorry about that. So here it is actually scope should be clearly defined, right? That means now you will say that, let's say it's a 2.5 years of project. Are you asking me to write down all the user story right away? No, I'm not asking that actually. What I am saying here, after the discovery phase, at the feature level, right, or the epic level, basic functionality that customer is looking at, right? Not basic, but all the functionality that customer is looking at should be well defined at the epic level or feature level. Then that particular feature can be broken down into user story in the subsequent execution phase. But there should not be any circumstances where a complete new feature is coming into the picture, right? All the assumptions should be clearly called out. Okay, I'll not go into the detail of the assumptions, but let's say the environment should be available. Then all the required accesses should be in place by so and so dates. Your user story should be approved by so and so date. I mean, after submitting, let's say within 2 days, the user story should be approved. Feedback should be received in so and so dates, and so on and so forth, right? All the assumptions should be called out, and it should be clearly called out that if assumptions are not met, then timeline will also not be made, right? Then, as I was mentioning, the change control board should be introduced at the contract level itself, right? And the change control board should have, we should include customer representative also in that board. It should not be your organization only who is handling the change control board. It has to be a collaborative body who will talk, who will collaborate, who will discuss and decide whether this is a change or not, agreed upon change or not. And the responsibility, roles and responsibilities should be clearly called out at the contract level itself for the change control board. Then comes into picture the RACI matrix, right? So RACI matrix should be clearly called out. RACI matrix means responsible, accountable, okay, consulted, and informed, right? So for the customers also, and for your organization also, the registry metrics should be clearly called out. And last but not the least, the out of the scope items should be clearly called out in your contract, so that during execution phase there should not be any ambiguity. And that is also another outcome of your discovery phase. This should come out from your discovery phase. So net, what I'm trying to say here is you should have a dedicated discovery phase, maybe as a separate contract or a TNM contract, fixed contract, whatever it is. Based on some contract, you should have a dedicated discovery phase. You should outline the outcome of the discovery phase, that after 2 months of the discovery phase, this will be my outcome. Like I will list down the out of scope item, I will list down the features and epics, and I'll do the estimation. But this phase has to be there. Okay? Then part is basically the estimation and scope definition, and these probably I have discussed during discussing our contract itself, right? So estimation and scope definition is basically outcome of your discovery phase, and that should be part of your contract. So I have already discussed in details. So you need to basically involve all the senior folks, right, from your uh, organization: architect, senior developer, senior tester, senior business analyst, DBS, right, who will be there in the discovery phase to understand the requirement in details, and who will be part of the estimation team, right, who will be doing the scope definition and estimation, who will be calling out the out of scope item. And these should be your core team who will be there throughout in your program, right? And after the estimation, after the scope definition, right, you should plan for some contingency. Having said that, you will have a change control board, you have a defined feature, you have feature priorities, you have a defined epic list and all. But there will be some unforeseen circumstances where your CR or the change request may not through, right? But at that point of time, you need to sustain your business also, right? And you need to deliver. So for that, you should plan for some contingency on top of the estimation that your senior folks have done, right? So I would say maybe 20%, 15 to 20% is the preferable limit of the contingency. So you should have that contingency, and then you should submit your estimation and also the scope. Now let us continue our discussion on the probable solution part. So another important aspect is basically the backlog management. So as I was mentioning, right, I will not be discussing about the theoretical aspect, right? The PO and PO should be as part of your team throughout, and all this aspect, right? This I'm assuming all of you are aware, right, as part of your basic agile concept. Here I will be specifically talking about what will be the roles and responsibilities of the backlog management team as a whole, right? Before getting into the backlog, even starting the backlog, we should have a properly well defined, well accepted DOR criteria, right? DOR are the basically entry criteria for any requirement or user stories. If these are satisfying this thing, all the ATCs are clearly called out, it has been groomed and so on and so forth. So basically definition of ready, then only it will be handed over to the development team. And before handing over to the development team, it is mandatory, there should be a mandatory process in place where basically you are getting a formal sign up from the PO or business, right, or whoever the appointed person, appointed authority is, right? The basic reason of this DOR sign off is, right, during demo, if we are getting some feedback, there can be two situations, right? One is in the approved user story, there are some already defined and approved, what I would say, ATCs are there, I mean acceptance criteria are there, but development team actually missed out to incorporate some of them. That can be one situation. Another situation is, so that is first situation what that I discussed right now is clearly a defect, right? And we have to do that without any second thought. But there can be another situation where basically a feedback is a complete new ask from the business, right? At that point of time, it is very difficult to handle, and then and there the backlog management team should refer this to the change control board, right? Because this is the probable candidate of change or CR. But the thing is, this backlog management team do not have the right authority to decide then and there, and that is why the change control body is there. Okay, so that is why DOR checklist is so important, and a process of getting pre-approval, even starting with the development, is very much required, right? Then, in order to avoid the start stop start kind of things, you should have a proper grooming phase, right? So that the tester developer they understand, right? Even before getting into the development or testing phase, they should be aware about the entire nitty-gritty of the requirement or user stories, right? They should go into the chat sessions, right, or the clarification sessions, right? They should ask the relevant question. Those should be clarified by the POs or business analysts. And after they have a proper understanding of the requirement and they know what they are supposed to do, they should actually take those stories into the development, so that once they are starting the development, there is no question of stop any further, unless there is some external factors coming into the picture, right? But from requirement wise, they should not stop, right? And that is what in lean principle we say, right? Avoid start stop start, right? And if you can really emphasize this aspect, you will definitely get a good benefit of wastage of any time, right? Then again on the same line, so that the development team do not sit idle at any given point of time, this backlog management team need to ensure that at any given point of time there are n+2 sprint of backlog handy. That means if let's say if you are in sprint 3, backlog management team need to ensure that there are sufficient user story for sprint 4, sprint 5 as well, right? So then as soon as developers are completing the sprint 3 work, they are uh, they are well equipped to take the next sprint of work, right? And thus we can ensure the team members are not sitting idle, and this is very important. Last but not the least is basically this backlog management team or requirement team has a significant responsibility. User stories level, if the changes are coming during the demo session, that we understand, right? But what if, right, at the epic level or feature level something is coming up that should not even go into the DOR process or approval process altogether? Right away those should be referred back to the change control board, right? Because at the beginning itself, during the brainstorming session, discussion with the users, this backlog management team identifies that this is a clearly new change or something new feature uh, business users are asking for, right? In Agile, we can very well do that, but here we need to keep in mind we have a constraint of fixed timeline and fixed cost also. So this situation should right away be handed over to change control board to decide further course of action. Now let us come and see what are the responsibilities of the change control board. So now we will be talking about the change control board, right? As I was highlighting that once the backlog management team identifies that this is a change, right, or this is a CR, this can be a CR, right? They are no one to actually ultimately approve or accept that, right? If anything is anticipated, that should be referred back to change control board, right? And change control board should comprising the customer representative also, and the definition of changes, right? That can I'm just giving some high level ideas, right? What can be the changes, but for your circumstances, based on your nature of the project, that can vary, right? For example, right, we during discovery phase, whatever the epic and feature you have actually like gathered and finalized, there should not be no new features, right? User stories can come. Now again, if you have a you have an approved user story, and you are going for a demo after development, demo feedback can come, but it should not be outside of the accepted or approved ATCs, right? Then it has to be in reference of change control board to decide, right, whether it's a change or not, right? So here the change control board has a dedicated role to play, right? And in our subsequent slide, right, I'll be discussing about two more important aspects, right? One is basically resource selection, another is basically environment readiness or environment management. So these two will also have some significant implication on the fixed width versus agile. And here also we should follow certain processes or follow certain thumb rules. That is what we are going to discuss in our next slide. So here pod is basically a self-organized and well experienced team who any of the team members can actually handle the delivery end to end, right? So that is what your pod means basically, right? And preferably 95% of the resources in your pod should be capable enough to deliver end to end, right? And you should provision as less as possible, right, junior engineers, because for such stringent timeline and scope related project, you don't have much time to train up the junior engineers, right? So they are and that you never factor in your estimation also. But in on ground reality we actually do this, and that is where we are losing out the times, right? And last but not the least, it's not only project managers, right, or account managers or whoever at the leadership role, their responsibility to deliver the project. No, right? All the module leads or pod leads or whatever the terminology you use for your organization, you should make the leads accountable and responsible for all the delivery. Credit should all go to them, and if there are any failure, that should also be they should be accountable and questionable and answerable for any circumstances. And thus the you can actually decentralize the control, and you can bring the autonomy into the team, and also sense of responsibility will come into the picture. And that is what your lean principle will trigger in, and that is where basically it will give you the agility. Now last but not the least is basically the environment management. As I was mentioning in the first slide, right? It is preferable to go for sequential releases. There you have a less complex environment management strategy need to follow, but in reality I can understand that cannot be the case, right, where you can actually go one by one releases, because you have actually committed for a bigger chunk of the work. And to achieve that, you need to bring some parallelism into the system. You need to basically run multiple pod in parallel so that they can actually continue the development of the multiple releases, right? But in order to do that, you need to have a dedicated environment manager in place. Most of the time we do not realize the necessity of this particular role, but believe me, right, on ground you have a significant requirement of an environment manager, right, who will be handling all the environment related needs, right? How many DB instances should be there, how many prod instances should be there, how many QA instances should be there for which releases, and so on and so forth, right? And during the development you will see that some of the DB instances are not working, something is falling apart, something is not in place. And most of the time here team get choked, right, because team members are haphazardly communicating with each other, right, and not finding any solution on time. But if you have a proper coordinator in terms of environment manager in place, right, he or she can actually coordinate this entire environment need, and his or her responsibility should be to have the required environment available, or the requirement environment in place for the respective pod, squad, or team before the stipulated time or before the time they are asking for, and that is what their success factor as an environment manager, and that is how your project will also be successful. And here, in order to do that, the environment manager should maintain a proper environment tracker, the one I am highlighting, where all the demands and ETS, right? For example, currently one squad is working on this particular release, this many instances they are looking for, and right after two sprint they will be starting development for another release. There the environment need is something else. There they will be looking for some different environment. So all this demand and need and expected ETA should be maintained in a tracker, so that environment manager can actually maintain the tracker and follow up with the respective teams, right? Last but not the least, in everywhere we are hearing this term DevOps and Agile goes hand in hand, and all these things. But believe me, the DevOps, nowadays, like, without DevOps you cannot think about a development, right? But actual success or actual benefit of DevOps will come into the picture when you can actually bring some real automation in place, right? Some of the environment provisioning should be automated, some of the, like, code merging will be automated, and whatever the mechanism you can think of, right? The test I mean test case generation, testing, whatever the possible ways you can think, try to automate as much as possible, and that is how you can actually save some good amount of effort, which you can actually channelize in some other aspect in order to meet the timeline. So these are the probable solutions in different way or different categories I just thought of, and I just thought of, wanted to share with all of you. And as I mentioned, right, this is not a Bible, and this is not the exhaustive solution that these are follow these rules and you will be able to success. That is not the case, but these are the probable solution, and whatever I have faced so far, or whatever I have experienced so far, these are the problems and these are the solutions. If we can apply, we will get definitely some benefit out of it. If you have any other aspect in your mind, do share that with me in terms of comments or in terms of whatever the means you want to, and that will definitely enrich me as an individual and also all my viewers, right? So thank you, friends, for watching this video, and if any of the discussion topic you can actually take back and implement in your projects, right? And get success out of it, that is what my biggest success will be, right? So I'll wait for your feedbacks, right? In terms of comments, right, or whatever the way you want to share. But please share your feedbacks, right? Your experience, and that will enrich me as an individual and also all my viewers as well. Okay, so I'll come back with another interesting topic. Till then, stay tuned, stay healthy, stay happy. Thank you.